Welcome to the You Go and Get It Girl podcast, a platform engineered to inspire girls and women of all ages to follow in the footsteps of high-achieving women in business, entertainment, and sports. A living reminder that you can't stop a go-getter. Go-getter, noun, defined as an aggressively enterprising person. A go-getter knows they can have any life you want. You can too, but you have to take it. You have to go and get it. We hope to help you do just that. Here is your host, Kurt Richardson.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the You Go and Get It Girl podcast. We have appreciated the support. This is going to be episode 5 or 6. I can't even remember, but the first one with Jennifer Justice was great. The Kathy Duva one is one of my favorites. And now we have a person that I actually used to work with. So this is the first time that this has happened. And I got to go through a few things here. So one, I actually watched this person start their career at their current job. So that was cool to see. It's just cool to see ascension. It's especially see ascension of people that look like us, and then also just cool people. I don't know her personally well, but all the people I know personally well, she's like their favorite friend. So we are so lucky to have Dr. KimArie Yowell joining us from locations unknown with a special background to make sure we're in compliance. How are you?
I am doing great, sir. How are you?
I'm fired up. I'm always excited. So what's been cool about doing this is most of the ladies I know through work and casually and had a relationship with, but I don't know them in real life per se. You know, I've met them in real life when we spent a day together or a couple days together or worked an event together. But obviously, you know, my wife was on a bachelorette party with you. You're like real in our lives. Here you are, real in our lives. So I appreciate you taking the time to join us. And it's one of my favorite one in that as much as my role in a lot of the girls' lives that prompted this is to help them get into sports and entertainment. I just want us to see ourselves as bigger than that. And that, you know, you work for a multi-billion-dollar company and you've made it happen in the place that you grew up in. So I just love that. So I guess let's start there. You're a Detroiter, homegrown Detroiter. As you're growing up, like, what did you think you're going to do with your life? Like, you know, could you see yourself like, hey, I'm going to be in learning and development and I'm going to be a C-level person?
Absolutely not. Farthest thing from it. Here's what I knew growing up. I knew growing up that I wanted to have hired help because I did not want to clean. I knew I wanted to have a private chef because I did not want to cook. And that was kind of the extent of here's the life I want to live. Mm-hmm. But in terms of, you know, when I was a young girl, I just knew that I needed to, in order for that to happen, I had to get out of the hood. Like, that's what I knew. Like, so that was my motivation to get out of the hood, because I saw so many folks with really big dreams leave. And then, you know, kind of like good times come back.
Yeah.
And so for me, my motivation was, I am not going to be a statistic. I am going to get out of the hood. I'm going to make something of myself. And if I come back, it's going to be on my own terms.
I love that. So what's cool is the other thing that's been great about being able to select the people that we wanted involved in this, and I probably said it on every episode, so I should say it here to give you context. What happened is I was at Oklahoma State. I work with all these athletic departments. You know, I work with the NFL. And this girl was like, Kurt, that's all great what you just did. And I don't mean any disrespect by this, but you've never been a female walking into any of these rooms. And then she asked me a question and she literally enlightened me. I mean, it was eureka and I know that because when she asked the question, I said, well, based on what you just said, it would be foolish of me to now answer that question because I don't have the POV. And that was one of the genesises of this. And what's been so cool is when we pick the people, none of them have started on third base. And I think that's what's cool. I do think that you had one super advantage in that you got to go to Cass Technical High School, though. And so I'm always curious when I meet technicians, like as an institution, how did that help you? If it did, I'm assuming it did, but it doesn't always have to be that way. I just wonder the role Cass Tech played in its life. I don't know any people that went to Cass Tech and were like, oh, that don't wave the Cass Tech flag.
Oh man, I bleed green and white.
I love it.
I am a technician through and through. Interesting enough, I didn't want to go to Cass.
Really?
That was not my desire. I either wanted to go to Renaissance or Northern. So my family, I'm from the west side of Detroit, and so I lived on like that border. So half of my family went to Northern,
Okay.
the other half went to Central. If you know anything about that.
I do.
Okay, so my grandmother was very clear that I would not be going to Northern or
You're
Central.
not going to a directional school is the way we talk about it in the neighborhood. You don't want to be
Right?
at a directional school often.
It's not happening, okay? And I could not go to Renaissance. And I mean, it's a really funny story. So, you know, with Cass and Renaissance and King, you have to take a placement test.
Mhm.
And so I was accepted into Renaissance, as well as Cass and King. And my grandmother said, that's all fine and dandy, but you're going to Cass Tech. Now, listen to my grandmother's reason for going to Cass. It was two. One, it was Cass Tech. It was the Cass Tech. But the other reason was I lived off of Hamilton. And when you live off Hamilton, it's one bus straight.
Okay.
If you go to Renaissance coming from where I'm from, you have to transfer.
Yep.
And she was like, look, with your discipline and lack thereof, there's no way you're going to get to school on time if you got to take two buses. But also being a young Black girl in the city of Detroit, she was just like, I don't feel comfortable and safe with you having to do that. And so that's how I ended up at Cass Tech. And it honestly was the best thing that could have happened to me, because when I walked into Cass, I went to neighborhood schools, you know, my entire life, but Cass was like the melting pot. So you had some of everyone at Cass Tech, but also the teachers at Cass. Like you just said it, when you meet Cass technicians, there's pride like no other. It doesn't matter where you go in this world, right? We all say the same thing. There's two types of folks, those that wanted to go to Cass and those that actually went to Cass. And so for me, having teachers who instilled in me pride, who said that there's nothing that I could not accomplish in this world, all I had to do was put my mind to it, that seeded me something so deep that, you know, 20 years later, I still have that same, you know, grit and tenacity to know that of all the schools I could have gone to in Detroit, I was selected to go to Cass. And not only did I go to Cass, I graduated from Cass. Yeah. And not everybody can say that.
Yeah, I love it. Now that fruit bears, it's still showing up. Like, you know, you've had success in your career. You had a great start to your career, become a C-level employee, and then you go back to school. So I'd love to know about it. And by the way, you don't just go back to school, you go to UPenn. So why do we want to become doctor? Like, what's in it? Like, I'm interested in that story. And I had to exercise restraint and not ask you personally before this. So I don't know the process behind it.
If you would have asked me, would I be Dr. KimArie Yowell, 30 years ago, I would have said, there's no way. There's no desire. I went to undergrad because, you know, my grandmother taught me very early on. She put me in all the after school programs, anything she could get me involved into. My grandmother's from Mississippi. My granddad was from Arkansas, and they had very limited education. But the thing that she taught me was that education will unlock the door to the world for you. And so she was very adamant that I go on to college. So I am the first college graduate in my family. So I'm very proud of that. And I have a ton of nieces and nephews who have gone on and go on to college since then. And I hope that they feel that I was able to impact them in a positive way. Heck, I helped most of them fill out their FAFSA so they can get into school, right? But when I got my undergrad, I said, I'm not doing this. I'm done, right? I graduated. That was as far as I felt that I was going to go. And then I started working at the University of Phoenix. And this was at a time, this is before the mortgage crisis. This was, when you had to have a college degree to get a job. I don't know if you remember that time, Kurt, but that was the time. And working with working adults who wanted to go back to school to better themselves really helped me understand the power of education, and what it could do for you, not just from a learning something to learn something, but the application of learning. So every program that I've attended has always been about application. Theory is great, but it doesn't mean anything in business if you can't actually apply it to help the business move. So fast forward, my decision to go to UPenn, I mean, it's the #1 ranked school from an education perspective, for their education school. I always said I wanted to go to an Ivy League. I will say that.
Yeah.
And that opportunity to go to UPenn and study education and understand technology and the connection to business, and how in this seat you're able to help the organization to thrive by enabling their strategy through people development, it just spoke to me. So I believe in formal education. So it was important for me to go in and understand, the research, to understand what's been done previously. So truly I could help Rocket to be even better, to sustain. And the only way that you're really able to do that is through developing your people in your organization. And I don't care what company, you talk to NFL players, you go to colleges, I don't care where you go, we're learning every single day. If you're not learning, you're dying.
Mm-hmm. And so even doing a long form podcast like this, our first episode had 1,800 views, which was more than I thought, because I really was doing this for that select group of girls that I have influence over. So I love that, because anyone hearing us right now is only one of those people that cares about lifelong learning and growing and adapting. And because this is going to be 30 minutes, I've done some that are 55 minutes, and YouTube tells you the percentage of, I'm so blown away that someone would listen to something we did for 58 minutes, but it tells me who they are. Now you just gave the most textbook answer for learning, though, for someone who is the chief learning officer of a large organization. So I love that. You're kind of in a spot where you're facilitating growth for people. You're a teacher at the highest level you could be. So I'd love to hear your passion for that and how that came up. Was that ever, and we hadn't talked about this, was that ever just a goal? Did you look at teachers in a way like, I want to do that, or make that impact, or you couldn't even see yourself as that?
I have so many funny stories, Kurt. So when I was in my junior year, going into my junior year, I was working at a healthcare company locally. And I remember talking to my supervisor at the time, and I was trying to figure out my major, because I was at that defining point and I had kind of jumped around a lot, but I got to that place where it was like, it's time to stop playing, declare a major so you can get out of here. And she said to me, I went to her and I said, well, what do you think I should study? And you know what she said?
Education.
Yes, she said, you should be a teacher, because when new hires come in, you do such a really great job of working with them, coaching them, training them. And it's not even your role. You just do it because you want to help them. And so I think you should be a teacher. And I said, nope, I do not want to do that. And this is real conversation. I said, teachers don't make any money. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I didn't share this, but at the time I had a 2-year-old. Mm-hmm. And I said, there's no way I can take care of my son and myself on a teacher salary. Mm-hmm. So I will not become a teacher. And instead, I went into business school and studied marketing and advertising.
What's funny, though, is then you actually become a teacher at the highest level, and the results of what you do now help people be able to take care of their family in a way that they couldn't have done. So I love you. The universe throws us some of those interesting curveballs sometimes. As you're going through, so what's been great is, obviously you're with Rocket. I worked there when it was a really small company, 600 people. And I've loved to see the growth. I've stayed connected over the years. I mean, but there was a point where I knew every Black person working there. And now it's this big, huge progressive company. It's doing all the, in my opinion, for what I care about, it's doing all the right things in all the right ways. And I love that. And you're a part of that, of course. But as you get into this world where you're ascending to the C-level, are you even aware? One of the things we've learned is that literally only 4% of people who do what you do, especially in finance, are Black women. Do you know that going in? I mean, I think we grow up as a person of color, you go through the world and you know you don't see representation, but that's staggering. That's like 9 out of 10 of your peers don't look like you. And so I'm wondering if you knew that as you're going through. And then also, how do you talk yourself through that? So many of the girls, including the question that sparked this, they have trouble seeing themselves in these roles where there's no representation.
Absolutely knew it going in. So I can share this story because I'm very open and candid, and I've had conversations with leaders here about when I first started, and you and I were crossing paths. Like I was coming in as you were transitioning out. And I remember, I started here as a leadership coach.
Yep.
And, I had not sold a mortgage. I had been in sales for many years. I had a background in marketing. I'd done B2B and B2C. And I remember coming in as a coach in our sales function and walking into a room one day, and it was all white men.
Yep.
There was no women, and there was no person of color, any type of color. It was all white men. And I remember saying to myself, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Because I left Dallas, I come back home, I picked up my son, uprooted him in his freshman year of high school. And I walked into that room, and I will tell you, Kurt, there was so much self-doubt. So, I started making up stories like, oh my gosh, they're going to see me as the angry Black woman. Oh, they're going to see me as the Jezebel. Oh, they're going to, like, all of those negative stereotypes that we, as Black women have heard about ourselves, have seen in the media. I immediately placed on those men in that room and said, that's how they're going to see me. And I remember, it was a couple of months I'd been here. And if you may not, maybe you don't, but I used to wear Black and blue suits every single day.
I remember you being, just so you're clear, I have a weird thing. I don't forget anything. I remember the meeting where you and the person who also started in leadership coaching at the exact same day as you, I remember you guys being announced to our team. So yeah.
Yeah, I had high bun. I was very serious. I was very rigid.
Yeah, we never even talked, by the way, when we worked together. Not even one time.
We didn't, because I was very focused, right? And it was, if it makes sense for us to have a conversation, I'll have a conversation, but I'm here to do a job.
I love it.
I was not here to make friends. I was here to do a job. Yeah. Here's the point of this, though. I had a leader at that time, and he noticed that something was different about me than when he hired me. And he said to me, and he is a white Italian male. And he says to me, what do you think is going to get in your way in being successful with this company? And I was like, you seriously want to know? And he's like, yeah, I seriously want to know. And I said, well, I'm Black, I'm a woman, and I don't know mortgages. And he chuckled and he said, well, yeah, you are Black and you are a woman. We can't change that, right? And he said, do you know of those three things, the only way that will get in the way of your success is the fact that you don't know this business. You being Black and you being a woman is not going to stop you from being successful. You can do anything you set your mind to in this company. He was like, but my job is to help you understand mortgages and how this company works. And I will tell you, one of my best leaders here, and I've had many, he took time every single day, just drilling me, feeding me, making sure that I was in the business and I understood the business, that I could hold a conversation, with the most senior leaders. And I look back on that now, 9 years later. I'm not in Black and blue, Banana Republic suits anymore. I come into this office full of color. My dissertation was on, exploring authenticity of Black women in Fortune 500 companies, because I hypothesize that opportunity exists on both sides in terms of what are the things, the limiting beliefs that are getting in my way that are preventing me from being my authentic self. Because anytime that I'm not being authentic, you're losing a piece of me. That's stopping me from actually doing this job to the best of my ability. And then what are ways that leaders can actually cultivate that authenticity? So now I'm just me. I'm bright. I shine like a diamond every single day. And you're going to get this. And I tell people this all the time. You pay me to honor you with the truth. You don't want me to give you the truth? Then I need to go do something else. But I couldn't have said that 9 years ago because I didn't have the confidence and belief in myself, not because of anything anyone else did, but I had to deal with me first before I could expect anybody else to receive me in the way that I felt that I should be received.
I love that. There's a couple things to unpack here. And the first is, one, thank you for sharing that story. But two, I love that so many times these women that we've had on that are high achievers, I put you in the highest, as much as I can celebrate you, that's where I have you in my mind. People think that that confidence isn't a learned skill. Like, oh, she's a high achiever because she believed in herself. No, I became a high achiever in spite of these moments of doubt. And I think that's important for women, especially, to know. Second, what's cool is it really is a chicken and the egg thing that starts to happen, because now you work at a company with 20,000 people that get to see two Black women in the C-level position that I'm aware. There could be more, but I didn't experience that. As much as I loved everything about my experience there, what you guys are creating is a manifestation that helps someone else walk in there and not have those doubts you had. So I love how it comes together in that way. I think there's also, and I'll skip ahead to something I was thinking about anyways. It's interesting for me to hear that about you, because I always thought of you as fierce, and I always thought of you as bringing your Black self to work. Because of how I talk, and I don't know any way that it happened, people think I'm code switching or whatever, but this is really me. I grew up in the projects and ended up talking like this. And I had to fight every day because of it. But I was always bringing my real self to work, but I always admired people who didn't. The way you wore your hair, the way you walked through, not talking to Kurt Richardson, the funniest guy there. All of that I admired, because I'm like, oh, she came to do it. And it looked I'm just sharing this with you, it looked confident from the outside. So I love to hear that story, that women need to know that it's an acquired thing. And that I think what you're delving into is something great. There are bad people. There's non-benevolent people in the world, but there are a lot of people that want to give you a fair shake. And you've got to be ready for that fair shake when it comes. And it sounds like that's the work you're talking about you have to do on yourself.
Yeah, I one of the things I say all the time is, preparation plus opportunity equals success, right? So I'm always working, all right? I'm always preparing myself, because I don't know when that opportunity is going to come. So I'm going to grind, right? Like the degrees that I have, like I didn't always know where I was going to end up, but I knew that I had to work on myself. The other thing I'll say about self-doubt, and we talk about imposter syndrome and things like that, I don't care if you're a man or a woman. Everybody at some degree has some level of doubt. The key is don't sit in it, don't stew in it, right? But recognize what's making me feel this way, what's going on. And one of the things that I do often is I lean into the discomfort. So, oh my God, I got to talk to this person. I got to talk to Kurt. Okay, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to recognize what's happening in my body, what's happening in my mind, right? So that I can start overcoming those things. And the more reps you get, right, the better you get. It's like same on the field as off the field. Doesn't change.
Yeah, I tell people reps work and nothing else does. That's great that you went and got a doctorate. That's great that you went and took this test, sir or ma'am. Doing it is the only way to learn. Reps work and nothing else does. The other stuff supports it. Here's an interesting thing that I think about then. So now, and this is a great opportunity for a lot of the girls I work with in sports. Black women specifically have the hair issue of society either telling them not to do it that way or feeling not to do that way because they don't have representation. Has that gone away? Like Kamari is going to bring her hair to work. but I know everyone doesn't feel free to do that. And it's not safe for everyone to do that too. I'm not naive too. Do you ever, because you keynote speak and we're in some of that world where you walk into a room and it's like, oh, wow, none of these people look like me. That still happens to me all the time. Do you still have that internal nudge like, oh, or has that gone away? Have you been able to work through that entirely?
So I had a leader one time that told me, not at my current organization, but many, many moons ago. And I mean, I'm Black girl magic all day, every day, right? And so when I was younger, every week, maybe every other day, my hair was different.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a leader say to me, I need you to stop changing your hair so often. I was like, what? He was like, well, it makes me feel as though I can't trust you. It doesn't speak to consistency. And if you want to be a leader here, I need to know that you're dependable. And you changing your hair on me causes too much. And when I was younger, I was like, oh, okay. And literally, Kurt, I stopped.
Wow.
Like I stopped because for his comfort.
Mm-hmm.
For his comfort, right? And so now if I just decide to change my hair, I'm changing my hair. If I decide, like I've been rocking these butterfly locks for all summer because it just makes it a whole lot easier. Come winter, I'm going to rock something different, right? Mm-hmm. And when people come up to me and they're like, oh, I like your hair. It's okay, thank you. You changed today. I sure did. Just don't touch it, right? Don't,
Yeah, there's still boundaries.
Okay, there's still boundaries. And you're right. Like I do a lot of speaking engagements. I walk still into a lot of rooms that are not as progressive as we are here at Rocket, where I am, especially in this place of learning, corporate learning.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I am one of the only still. And what I've recognized and I fully believe is representation matters.
No question.
And so we can't be what we don't see. And so I have to show up in my fullness, right? Nails, everything, because that's where I'm from. I'm the west side of Detroit. And I came back to the city because the city has a soul. And so who am I to shed that at the door and not bring my fullness into this room? I've earned this spot. I am educated. I've done all the things that my grandmother said that I should do. And so if you get caught up because my hair is a certain way, that's about your discomfort. And so where I question people is, what is triggering for you? For me to walk in as I am, what's the problem with you? Right? And the more we're starting to ask those questions of people, instead of taking on somebody else's baggage. And I know I'm a little long with it, but I think these things are important, right? Like what we do is we allow folks to dump on us, meaning like they got baggage, they have issues, whether it stems from when they were children, media, whatever. And then what we allow them to do is dump their baggage off at our front door. And then we pick that baggage up. And now we're carrying somebody else's stuff versus, no, I'm going to walk freely and boldly in who I am. And to your point, Kurt, like I used to get teased growing up because of how I spoke, right? But like you were you. You know what I'm saying? Like, and even those folks that I know that code switch, if you're code switching and that's how you feel you need to navigate to survive, like code switching is a coping mechanism. It's a survival tactic.
400 years. Oh, yeah.
400 years. So my brothers and sisters that are like, look, yes, I'm code switching. I understand. I can sit here and have a conversation with Mike Malloy, Jay Ferner, and TB. And I'm just too old these days to keep my ain'ts, in my head and not out my mouth. But I understand that there are some spaces where if I need to survive because I'm in a particular place, I may need to articulate a little bit differently, right? When you think about AAVE, African American Vernacular English, that's real. Yep. That is real dialect. That's real language. But what we do for Black people is we say, that's not okay for you to be able to have two different dialects, two different languages, one that you speak in the comfort of your family versus one that you speak in front of others who don't know you. So we got to start reframing the narrative of what we're telling ourselves because we've allowed other people to diminish who we are as a people.
And that's, well, I got to stop you there, and I hate to even interject because you're at the pulpit. One of the things that I work with and talk to people about is it's hard to understand what is Black culture, what is Southern culture, and what is hip hop culture. They're not all the same. I do think our language is one of these last things because our language is stolen when you get into AAV and stuff like that. It's what causes people to not want to learn and not want to go to CASEC is that the way they talk to their mother, their most comforting person, is wrong or incorrect inside the school environment. And I think that's a whole nother conversation. It's stuff I'm actually, one of the things I'm really getting passionate about is, you know, I don't like the idea of meet people where they are because the world is where it is and we got to bring people along.
Right.
But there are some things that, like, you know, why do you want to make a 7-year-old feel uncomfortable about the word ain't?
Right.
Right. And that's an easy example, but I'm not even getting in the way that we talk in the neighborhood. Like, you know, he had enough problems. She had enough problems just getting here today with bus transfers, or
Yep.
she hates sleep for dinner. What are we arguing about language for?
Exactly.
Especially with the tools that we have. We got enough problems. I want to be respectful of your time and just ask you this here. You helped me solve a real problem one time I had, and I'm not going to go into the details of it, but people look to me in the same way that people think high achievers don't have doubt. People look at me as like not fearful, but I got to fit in too. We got a good life here, man. I grew up in the projects and I live on a golf course. I'm not trying to mess that up, but at the same time, people think I have a responsibility and I think I have a responsibility. I was in a situation where people came to me and said, Kurt, you got to address this. I was elected and I went to you and you gave me good advice and we followed up, and it in my head, I thought it was going to go the opposite way too, just in that whether it's conditioned or media or whatever, when addressing anything related to race, feels like you now get moved to this box like, oh, he or she, they're always thinking about that. And it's like, no, this is a situation we had to address. But I'm interested, how did you get so sageous with advice? Like, my gut is that you grew up with your grandma based on our conversation so far, but I'm wondering, like, who are these people that taught you when to give advice and when to just shut up and let, you know, some things we also got to let, there's no podcast for it. There's no Kamari speech for it. You got to let the reps work.
Yeah, it 100%. My grandmother, raised in the Baptist church, you know, 7 days a week, twice on Sundays, is what we did. She was the mother, she was the nurse, and she was the janitor. And so that I learned a lot from her and my grandfather. Interesting, my grandfather didn't talk. He said he was a man of very, very few words, but I learned from that as well, because when he did speak, you better listen. And, you know, the other thing would just be experiences and life, you know, and that ability to hold space for people, I think is extremely important. And I've also just learned that you got 2 years for a reason. You know, everything that you're thinking doesn't need to be said. Yeah,
that's good advice. Well, we appreciate you. I appreciate you as a person. I appreciate you as what you represent to people. I got 2 brown girls. Well, I got 3 brown girls. My oldest girl's 26 now. I don't even know if she'll be watching this stuff, but you know, Angela and I have talked a lot about, you know, we tell our babies every day, it's cool to be brown, it's cool to be a girl, but I know the world's not going to do that when they leave here every day. So I just love, as I say on this in ending, I just love that you spent time with us, and people that maybe don't have someone like you, that looks like you, that feels like you, and they have these issues, there's some resource out there if they find this. So appreciate you spending time with us. We also value what you all do for the community of Detroit. You know, I lived there for a long time in my 20s and 30s and just watched it change. And then after we came back from Florida, I went down there, and the evolution is still going on. And there's work to do in the neighborhoods and stuff, but I believe what you guys are doing is a big part of it. We live in a system that we live in, and it's a capitalist system, and we've got to, there's a role for viability financially.
Yep.
And then I hope that continues to spill over the neighborhood. I know you guys are doing your part on that. Anyone that watched this, I'd love you to hit like or subscribe. Unless she tells me otherwise, I'm going to put in her information here so you can follow her on Twittergram or InstaFace or whatever. But also you can just Google her. You know, she's out and about. There's lots of interviewers on here. Thank you for spending time with us. I appreciate you so much.
Thank you.